So the hits against Ryan Haywood from Achievement Hunter just keep stacking on top of each other. Just earlier yesterday, another fan came forward to share her story about how Ryan used her naivete when it came to sex, when it came to relationships, when it came to her mental health, when it came to her status as a fan of his content, and how he used his platform as a content creator for Roosterteeth to abuse his community authority over her and to convince her to meet up with him in LA and have sex with him, and how they sexted numerously despite the fact that she was only 17 at the time.
We started sexting consistently after that, and in September was when Achievement Hunter was doing something in LA, I'm not sure.
And yeah, that's a lot to drop in the first 30 seconds of this video, which wouldn't really be the case if it weren't for this Reddit post and this YouTube video from this fan that not only has a lot of detail to it, but not only where she shows photographs of Ryan being in her hotel room and, being physically there, but also shares DMs between her and Ryan Haywood that confirm really kind of our worst fears, that Ryan was not only sexually engaged with somebody who was underage, but that he was using his status as a content creator for Roosterteeth to further his own selfish gains and to, ruin his life, really. So before we get into the finer details of what she talked about, just want to take a very brief moment to remind you to please subscribe to the channel, like the video, leave us a comment down below, and let us know what you think of the ongoing controversy. But without further ado, let's get into what she talks about. So Michelle Vlogs is a very small YouTuber, not too dissimilar to us, who basically seems to have more or less just come out with a very long, detailed, and by very long and detailed, I mean 8.5 minutes, where she talks about her experience with Ryan Haywood. Now, it is important to know that she is not the only girl to have come forward. She's one of a few, but she's also only one of, I think, maybe 2 or 3 who have actually had physical evidence that shows that Ryan engaged in something with them. She starts off just by showing her the DMs that she gets sent from Ryan through Instagram, where yes, you could make the argument that if it was cropped a certain way, then her evidence would be null and void, but she includes the full shot of the Instagram DMs where you can see that it's her account that's signed in, you can see that it's Ryan who's talking to her, and you can see that it is on the official Instagram app. It's not on the, website. It's not on anything you can use that's necessarily easy to edit. Is it still possible? Absolutely. Does it seem likely? Absolutely not. She shows how Ryan goes from being this friendly, outgoing community member who just seems to kind of like engaging with fans because he's not really familiar with social media, which is something that a lot of people kind of jumped up to give an excuse to Ryan about, that maybe people were misinterpreting what he was saying because the guy really, until I think it was maybe like the last 1.5 to 2 years, give or take, where Ryan actively was avoiding Twitter and Instagram and stuff like that, which now with this new evidence, it might seem a little bit more damning as to why he was avoiding it, as opposed to maybe he was uncomfortable with it, or maybe he just, didn't really know how to use it. But anyways, that was one of the excuses people were giving to him, and now it kind of looks like maybe it wasn't really so much of an excuse the guy deserved to have, because he seems to have just immediately used it for the benefit more so to himself to go and engage in these illicit affairs, rather than using it as a platform to grow their content and using it as a platform for people to get to know him better as a person. But, I guess he did get people to know him better as a person. Who he really is, right? So she then shows pictures about how he basically gradually goes from just being this friendly, outgoing community member to being this outrightly flirtatious and sexually explicit person who, has a wife, who has kids. And then she talks about how he essentially manipulates her into being an exception to the rule, where if he can just sleep with her, he's going to be continuing to be happy in his marriage because there's no physical intimacy in their marriage. And admittedly, she doesn't share the she doesn't share a screenshot where Ryan talks about what was wrong with his marriage, which is a little bit of a gap that might need to be rectified at some point, but that's not our business. Whatever the case may be, she goes on to talk about how she essentially gets manipulated by him because he sells his marriage as being unhappy because there's no physical connection anymore. So she essentially agrees to sext him and to meet up with him to more or less satisfy his physical urges so that, he can continue being happy in his marriage. And she doesn't really realize, because she's young and naive, she doesn't realize that this is just Ryan's methodology of getting people to sleep with him, and that really there is no corroborated or substantiated evidence behind the scenes to say that he had an unhappy marriage outside of, what he was doing right now, which doesn't really show an unhappy marriage. It could very well just show somebody who's a very poor judge of character and somebody who just has some loose wiring inside their head, who just doesn't think things through or just doesn't prioritize things very well. But whatever the case may be, Where it becomes increasingly more problematic isn't so much, well, I mean, I shouldn't say isn't so much, because it is a very big deal that you're sexting with an underage person. That's a huge no-no. But then when there was an event in LA, she went to go meet up with Ryan, and she actually has pictures of him in the hotel room with her, which is, again, pretty problematic. Not only does she have pictures of him in the hotel room with her, she then shares the story of how Ryan and her had sex, and it doesn't sound like it was a enjoyable experience for the two of them.
2017, when I lost my virginity to him. Why I knew I was a virgin, hell, I think he was very excited about it, telling me things like, I'll teach you how to really please a man, and he never really asked for my age. He asked me if I was in high school or college, and I was in college. But side note, if you're doing something, you're a man asking a girl if she's in high school or college, it's probably a good sign to not sleep with her. He asked me on the day whenever I was ready to have sex, just tell him, and I said, yeah, I'm ready. And instantly he ripped my dress off, he put a condom on without any prep or foreplay, he just penetrated me, and I was a teen. That didn't work out, and his smart solution was just to take the condom off and just finger me for like less than a minute and then put himself back in. It lasted hours and it was very rough. He always checked in with me every few months just to see how I was doing.
From how she described it, with her being a virgin and Ryan basically treated her very poorly and didn't really, do any foreplay or anything, and basically just went all in and essentially caused a lot of pain because, for anybody who is familiar with the process of, sexual intercourse and how it feels when you're a female and a virgin, then obviously that there needs to be something that happens beforehand. Otherwise, it's going to be a very painful experience for, well, at least one of you. She then talks about how about how almost immediately after there being an issue with her being a virgin, Ryan's solution is to take off the condom and basically just continue going to town. Now, I'm not here to represent that as some sort of, abuse case. I mean, I don't know if that's one of the claims that's being made against him. All I can say is that sounds extremely off-putting, to say the very least. Granted, that is the part of her story where you kind of have to take it at face value, because yes, she has, photos and stuff showing that Ryan is being, well, unfaithful and that Ryan is making bad decisions, and it does support the claims against him. But when it comes to what he physically did with her, that's kind of where you just have to either take it on faith that she's telling the truth, and you kind of just have to juxtapose it with Ryan's statements and with Ryan's reaction to leaving the company, and you kind of have to make your own connection as to whether or not you believe it to be an accurate representation of what happened or not. And that's pretty much kind of the major details that we know now. Jeremy Dooley, one of the other Achievement Hunter members, also had a stream last night where he made one particular long comment that I think summarizes this whole situation pretty well, because with the exception of like somebody coming forward with a video like this where there's photos, where there's evidence, where there's dialogue, where there's details, where there's dates, you have to realize that we are taking a lot of this at face value as community members and not as actual physical working staff of Roosterteeth who were physically and personally connected with Ryan Haywood. The fact of the matter is we are only ever going to know the details that they want us to know as a company, because there is a professional standard. So let me read you out Jeremy's statement real quick, because I think that it summarizes it pretty well. Quote, I want to remind you it's a rough time for everyone. You're going to be feeling a lot of emotions right now. I know I am. I know some of you are feeling anger, betrayal, sadness, and denial. A lot of you can attribute it to shock. If you were anything like me, all you're doing is feeling like you're wishing that you'll wake up at some point. That you'll wake up and it was all a bad dream and it's over. But that's not going to happen. Eventually that shock is going to wear off and you'll have that acceptance, and then that's when we can actually start to heal and move on. One of the hardest things about all this is that there's a lot of things that people don't know and people will never know. That's one of the things that it's important to accept. That there is a level of privacy and professionalism, and so there will always be stuff that you don't know, and that sucks, but that's just the way that it has to be. You are just going to have to trust the people in Achievement Hunter. You're going to be seeing people in Achievement Hunter saying things like they really hurt and it feels like we lost a family member. I think it's very important to remember that we have our reasons for feeling this way. There's going to be a lot of people who are going to try to argue with that. There's going to be a lot of people who will try to go, oh, well, how bad was it really? And I'm just letting you know that every single decision that's been made was necessary. None of this has been easy. I'm asking you in this time to trust us. I know it's not easy. You probably know how big of a fan I was before I worked at Achievement Hunter and how much it meant to me to take a picture with him at a Roosterteeth Expo. It meant a lot. It hurts. It's important to know that we're going to get better, and you're just going to have to take our word on this stuff because you will never know the full story because it's the way that things have to be. It's okay to not be okay right now because eventually you will be okay, and that's what you need to remember. End quote. So obviously what you need to take away from that is two main things. Number one, you are never going to know the full story of what happened unless for some reason Ryan decides to come forward and do a massive expose on what exactly the details were around his being let go of Roosterteeth. You're only ever going to know if Roosterteeth decides to do the same thing. Considering that would be extremely unprofessional on their side, I would not hold my breath for Roosterteeth to come forward and make a statement. The other main thing that you need to take away from this is that, like Jeremy said, there is a level of privacy and professionalism that you are just going to have to accept when it comes to this. Now, obviously, we do have people like Michelle who are coming forward and saying things and providing details and providing photos. Is a level of, I guess, peeking behind the curtain that we're going to be able to see, and you're just going to have that as your satisfaction to the curiosity around this whole situation. And ultimately, when it comes down to it, and no matter what, Jeremy is right. Things are going to take a while to go back to normal, and it's going to take a while for this to really settle in for people at Achievement Hunter. I know that they're currently taking a little bit of a break from doing live streams and stuff like that, and I'm sure that Roosterteeth is still in the midst of investigating exactly what's going on. But whatever the case may end up being, regardless of where this all pans out, at the end of the day, Jeremy summarized it very beautifully. And I hope that Michelle finds some sort of peace in her life, providing that, she is telling the truth. And I also hope that things continue to come to light. But I also hope that if it's something that the community does not need to know, then I hope that it stays with Achievement Hunter and with Roosterteeth and with FunHaus. Because if it is details that we do not need to be aware of, then by all means, keep it to yourself. So that is going to be it for this video, guys. Thank you for checking in on this update with Ryan Haywood. If you were curious about if there is any new news on it, that's kind of really the only major thing right now is that Michelle Vlogs has come forward and provided some pretty hard evidence against him. And Jeremy made a statement that summarizes pretty much how everyone should be viewing this situation. It should still be a conversation. It should still be something that we kind of try to update ourselves on, but it is something that you're just going to have to be okay with not knowing the full details of it. But you also shouldn't be using that as an excuse to just do nothing but speculate, and don't start putting words into Ryan and Adam's mouths. Don't start failing to recognize that there are victims to this and that they're the ones that we should be listening to, but at the same time we have to consider everything all at the same time. So that's going to be it for us, guys. Thank you for checking us out. Be sure to like the video, subscribe to the channel if you haven't already, leave us a comment down below. We're trying our best to answer some of the more pressing comments that people leave on here. It is a little bit difficult. It's only really 2 of us who are moderating this channel, so it's a little difficult to keep up with a couple hundred comments every other day. It's also something that we're just not crazy familiar with. I'm sure you can tell we've only been working on this YouTube thing for a couple of months. So again, just be patient with us, and we will talk to you next time.